There was a time, not so long ago, when being out as a gay man, a lesbian woman, a member of the bisexual or transgender community, out in the workplace was, pardon the pun, the kiss of death. But that's not the case nowadays, or is it? Next up, we're going to speak with Alice Kessler, Director of Government Affairs for Comcast. Alice, welcome.
Thank you, David. It's good to be here.
Thank you. I mean, a little bit of a dramatic intro, but I mean, there was a time when, being out was life-threatening to people. What is it like now for an open lesbian in the corporate world?
I think it's a really good climate now. I think it depends on the company, but getting here wasn't easy, right? And you talked about what it was like, and not so long ago, you could be discriminated against in the workplace for your sexual orientation, and especially in California, we've changed that. And the work that we've done to change the laws has really had an impact on that glass ceiling for LGBT individuals in the corporate world or the nonprofit world or government, anywhere in the workplace. So I think this is the best time we've ever had in history. But there's still issues and there's still work to be done.
Do you encounter homophobia when you're ever out? I mean, as a businesswoman, do you ever hear remarks that you think they wouldn't say that to a man, or they wouldn't say that to a straight person?
Right. I don't. I have not experienced an overt kind of comments or anything like that. I think this is the case as well with other communities that have historically faced barriers in the workplace. The issues tend to be more systemic, more about the policies and the procedures, and less about I'm going to make an outwardly homophobic or racist or sexist comment in the workplace. I think there's a real sensibility around that kind of behavior is not tolerated. And in fact, it's illegal. So most employers know that they cannot allow that kind of behavior to happen in the workplace. Right. But you look at what are some of the ways in which there may be systemic issues, right? And what kind of policies do employers have that are providing a workplace that is really comfortable for LGBT individuals, and maybe recognizes some things that they could do to go above and beyond,
right?
And provide some benefits and some recognition that, I'll give you an example. Currently in California, because of federal law, if you are a domestic partner and you are receiving health care benefits under your partner's plan, there's a tax that you are assessed. There's a federal tax that the partner that has the benefits has to pay. And this was several months ago, I believe, but Google came out with a policy that they would basically backfill the lost expenses that those domestic partners are paying. So I think that's an example of really where the corporate world is moving, and they're understanding that they need to retain the talent, and create policies that will keep, especially a company based in the Bay Area where they have a lot of LGBT employees, they want to keep the best and the brightest there.
Yeah.
So they're going a step beyond.
My husband Alfredo, who is now dual citizenship, Spanish and United States, when Spain legalized same-sex marriage, said yes, but he said it's very different how it's done here and there. He said in Spain, suddenly the whole country had same-sex marriage, but he said the culture has not caught up. And he said especially in the corporate culture in which he worked in Europe. He said in the United States, we're getting it piecemeal and it's taking slower, but he said by the time there's legal same-sex marriage on the federal level, all of the corporations will have realized this was good for business long before. Right. So businesses are leading the way here in a way they're not doing other places. Do you think that's still the case?
Yeah, I do. And in that venue, we've been able to make progress that maybe can't be accomplished yet in certain states. So you look at one of the biggest initiatives, and I think one of the places where HRC, the Human Rights Campaign, has had the greatest impact is they do an assessment of Fortune 500 companies and how are they doing on LGBT equality, how are they treating their LGBT employees, and companies pay attention to those reports, and it affects their behavior and their policies. So while you may not be able to affect the change through a legislative channel or a legal channel, you can work in the corporate world within those organizations to make change, and I do think we're really getting there. But it interacts with the law as well, right? And the legal changes that we make those lead the way for the workplace policy. So if it's clear under the law and California is a good example of this. California really drives a lot of the policy that affects employees nationwide.
Absolutely.
Right?
And even
because
sometimes internationally, I would think, as far as
sure,
precedent.
if you have a national or a multinational company and they have to abide by California law on certain points in terms of domestic partner benefits or family policies, they're going to apply that across the company in some cases, and then you know, those LGBT individuals who may live in a state like Georgia that doesn't have a lot of protections, they're going to benefit from those protections.
Now, you've worked within the LGBT corporate world and government affairs world for a while now. We were chatting before the camera started about the state of the movement nowadays. What is the state of the LGBT movement? And are we still a movement, or are we kind of, I don't want to say a movement in a decline, but a movement that's really beginning to be, you know, in the melting pot, to use a stereotypical phrase?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I often say that a lot of times within the LGBT umbrella, there's not a whole lot holding some of us together other than the fact that, you know, hey, I have attractions to people of the same sex and so do you, and that's a very loose basis upon which to find common ground. We're a community that has diversity in so many ways, in terms of gender, in terms of ethnicity, race, gender identity.
And even politics. I mean, there was a time when certainly the LGBT movement was very much identified with one party.
Right, and that's not the case. I mean, you've got the log cabin Republicans, and I think that's positive. I think that that's a sign of the community maturing and the movement maturing, that we're a big tent and we've got a lot of people. But then then the issue becomes, well, are we all fighting for the same things, or do we have different interests, and we're all trying to fit under this one rubric, and sometimes it's a bit of a clumsy fit. But I think what it comes down to is we are a movement that is working to achieve full equality for people regardless of their sexual orientation or their gender identity. And I think among the movement leaders and the leading organizations, that's commonly understood, that that's really what we're fighting for. It takes different forms. It might be about transgender rights. It might be about health and human services issues. It might be about marriage. It might be about youth issues. But at the end of the day, it's to be treated fairly and equally, both in the eyes of the law and the eyes of society.
You say the leaders of the movement, and so you would still call it a movement till we obtain that equality. They understand what the mission is, what the, you know, keeping the eyes on the prize is. Do you think the average member, quote unquote, of the LGBT community knows about the work that is being done on the national level for our community by groups such as Equality California, on whose board I know you sit, or openly gay professionals? Do they understand the battles that still have to be fought, or do they see something like the A-list or, you know, Will and Grace, which is now no longer on, but now they say, oh, well, we're in the media. Everything must be okay. You can say gay or lesbian or bisexual or transgender, and
I think it depends on one's life experience and how these issues hit home for them. A lot of people are dealing with real life discrimination where they've been in a committed, loving relationship for 20, 30, 40 years, and they may live somewhere in this country where they get absolutely no recognition of that relationship, and that really means something to that couple. It means that, you know, if they have a child, it might mean that one or both of the partners, their parentage comes into question.
Or if they're married to someone who is not a United States citizen, they don't have
deported. Immigration rights. The issue I mentioned earlier about having to pay extra taxes on your health care insurance, being discriminated in the workplace, because in many states in this country that's still allowed. You can be fired for being gay or lesbian or bisexual or transgender.
Now, you and your wife have been married now for how many years?
Coming up on a year.
Did it surprise you, or let me back up. People ask me sometimes, how long have you and your husband been married? And I say, well, depends on who you ask, 13 years or 2. A
lot of people have been married several times to their partner.
That's right. We're helping build the financial structure of the country with all our marriage gifts. But seriously, it surprised me, not the legal issues of it. I kind of had a list of suddenly all the things that we gained by virtue of having equal marriage rights. But what surprised me was the emotion of it. Did either of those things surprise you? Like, did you suddenly realize, wow, I'm married? Or were you prepared for what that meant? And do you think a lot of people are?
No, I absolutely think for me, because you can get all the legal rights in California through domestic partnership, and my wife and I are legally domestic partners in California. But for me, it really was about that other piece of what it meant for our family and our friends to see us get married, and what it meant for each other. It was, you really can't put words to what that means. And I think it was transformational in terms of the way that people think of us as a couple, and the way that they, you know, my wife's family now considers me their daughter. And I really don't think that that would have been possible had we not gotten married in front of them, with them a part of it. It was transformational for us as a couple, and also for them. And there's a lot of debate about marriage within the movement, right? And there's people who think that's not what we should be fighting for, and it's not important, it's a patriarchal institution, all these things. But marriage means a lot in the society in which we live, and it means a lot to those around us, and it's and it goes back to equality.
Right.
As long as we're in the business of providing not just the rights and responsibilities, but also that social status and all that flows from that, it shouldn't be closed off to a couple, a committed, loving couple, because they happen to be.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that I've always liked about, for instance, the organization on whose board you sit, Equality California, is that's a superlative word. It's not kind of equal or sort of equal or we wish it was equal, it's equality.
Right.
Equality California right now, leaving aside same-sex marriage, what are some of the battles that are, you know, being lined up to fight?
Yeah, a big issue has been safe schools and bullying. I think that issue is just as important as marriage in many ways, because young people are coming out at younger and younger ages, and they're not always safe in doing so, especially even in California and parts of the state where, you know, the Central Valley or Imperial County or Orange County, they can confront a lot of, even here in San Francisco, it's not so easy coming out and being accepted by your peers. And part of the issue is that there aren't a lot of representations of LGBT people for young people to see. And that's why I find it important as an out lesbian to be visible and to come on shows like this and talk about my life and my experiences, because I understand what that means to younger people who are struggling. So one of the issues has been, how do we create some of those representations, and how do we do that education? So one of the big issues for the organization has been a bill in the California legislature that would require that schools include the role and contributions of LGBT people in history lessons, history and social studies.
Now is the law of the state.
It was just signed by Governor Brown, but just as soon as it was signed, a referendum was filed by anti-LGBT groups that want to repeal that law. So that's a huge battle for the organization right now, is making sure that we can preserve that law that was passed, that really is, you know, it goes to education, and it's hard to sort of pick on someone when you learn about someone like them and something valuable that they did.
And that they have contributed to society both as an American and as a member of the LGBT.
In very positive ways, or that they were a leading scientist or a leading writer, or I didn't know that person was gay and I really have always admired them. That's powerful for a young person, and then they may look at a peer who says, you know what, I'm gay too. And that means something, and that's going to change behavior, and that's what that issue is about. And I think that that's every bit as important. But they all work together. All the issues work together, because of course, with the marriage issue, I think the thing that those who are in opposition often point to is, well, this is going to mean that we teach kids about being gay, and actually I think, what's so wrong about that? Why is that wrong? Right. It's about understanding that we're a diverse society, and we need to prepare young people to be able to enter that society where they understand that there are a lot of differences, and those differences are a strength.
Right. In our last moment, what's the website if someone wants to learn more about the work of Equality California?
It's eqca.org.
Thank you very much. We've been speaking with Alice Kessler about her work with Comcast and also Equality California. Next up, we're going to learn about the LGBT Studies program at City College of San Francisco. We'll be right back.